Good morning, everyone. Today we have a different perspective about the Sudaso. So this morning is April Fool's. So I think I'm supposed to say something funny that it's the opposite of what's going to happen, right? It's April Fool's. So everything exists. And everything doesn't exist. Okay, I'm trying to be funny, but it's not really working. So today we will be studying the Kaccānagotta Sutta that will be exploring a little bit this subject. And I see Victoria that has showed up. Good morning, Victoria. And good morning to everyone else who's listening to my bad jokes. Hello, Ella. And thank you, Bante, for showing up and sharing the Dharma. So there's a link to the sutta at the top of the live chat. And we will be studying this sutta with Bante in 2 days. So part of it will be explored today and the rest of it will be explored tomorrow. As usual, if you have any questions, please put them in the live chat and then Bante will address them as soon as he's done going through the sutta. And good to see you, Sally and Andy. Good morning to both of you. And without further ado, we can start.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. So, as mentioned, this morning we'll be looking at the Kaccānagotta Sutta, which happens to be one of my favorite suttas in the whole Pali Canon. So ever since we decided, and by we I mean Ayasoma, so ever since Ayasoma decided that we would be doing sutta study every morning live for the indefinite future, I've been looking forward to the day when we would talk about this sutta, the Kaccānagotta Sutta. So actually this might be my single favorite sutta in the entire Pali Canon, because it's usually the first one that comes to mind when people ask me which suttas I particularly like. So this sutta, it's quite heady, and even though it's not particularly long, it covers some incredibly profound material, and we'll be going through it a little bit more slowly than normal. And as Ayasoma mentioned, we'll be doing it in 2 parts. So, starting at the top. At Savatthi, then Venerable Kaccānagotta approached the Blessed One, paid respects to him, and sat down to one side. When he was seated to one side, Venerable Kaccānagotta said to the Blessed One, Bhante, it is said, right perspective, right perspective. Bhante, how is there right perspective? So that's samma ditti. So Venerable Kaccānagotta is asking the Buddha, what is right perspective? How is it that someone can be said to have samma ditti, right view? So samma ditti is the first step of the Noble Eightfold Path, and it's considered the foundation. The basic starting point of Buddhist practice is right view. And also the culmination of Buddhist practice is right view. So right view is a correct perspective on the nature of reality, a correct viewpoint about reality, an accurate perspective about the world. And it's defined in more detail in many, many places. One of the classic ones for this is, in fact, the Sammaditthi Sutta, the Sutta on right view, which goes into a long description of how to relate to right view. And we might go over that sutta one of these days, though that's another one which will take several days to go over properly. And the question of what right view is a really important one, because it's made quite clear in many places in the suttas that without right view, without samadhi, it's impossible to attain awakening, and it's extremely difficult to even make any progress on the path. So Kaccānagotta he's starting with an extremely important question. He's basically asking, what is the fundamental viewpoint which we need in order to be able to make progress on the path? What's the basic requirement? So the Buddha gives a very interesting answer. He says, Kaccana, for the most part, this world is based upon a duality, existence and non-existence. Kaccana, one who accurately sees with right wisdom the arising of the world does not have the thought of non-existence. Kaccana, one who accurately sees with right wisdom the cessation of the world does not have the thought of existence. So this is the Buddha's opening shot, his opening salvo. So Kaccānagotta asks, what is right view? How can one have right view? And the Buddha replies, most people believe in existence and non-existence. But one who clearly sees arising does not believe in non-existence. And one who clearly sees ceasing does not believe in existence. Actually, right there is enough. Right there is enough. We could stop the sutta right there and talk for hours just on this single paragraph. But also this single paragraph sums up the concept of suññatā. It sums up the concept of emptiness, which we were talking about the other day. So it's a very direct pointer at the true nature of reality. It's a very direct pointer at what reality actually is. So the Buddha, again, he starts out by saying, so most of the world has one of two viewpoints. Either they believe that things exist or they believe that things don't exist. But he says, when we closely pay attention to our experience and we see it correctly with wisdom, then what we see is just arising and ceasing, arising and ceasing, arising and ceasing, which means we recognize that things cannot be described as either existing or as not existing. So one who clearly understands arising does not say that things don't exist. One who clearly understands cessation does not say that things do exist. So one who clearly sees both arising and ceasing does not fall into the viewpoint that things exist or that they don't exist. So this is going completely beyond the whole concept of existence and non-existence. It's pointing to the idea that the belief that things either exist or don't exist is coming from a delusional mind. And we look at our daily experience and we realize that we're caught in this trap more or less all the time. I think that the camera I'm looking at exists. But does it? The breakfast that I ate a few minutes ago, I think that it no longer exists. But is that true? What's actually going on? So when we look closely at our experience and apply the recognition of impermanence, then what we see is that everything is insubstantial. It seems to have ongoing existence only because we don't pay enough attention. When we look very closely at what's happening, we see that things are ceasing to exist every single moment. They arise, they come into being, and they immediately cease to exist. So nothing has any lasting substance. Nothing has any lasting reality. Nothing has any lasting existence. So there is the manifestation of things, which is why we can't say that things don't exist. But that manifestation is accompanied by simultaneous disappearance, which is why we can't say that things exist. There is no length of time, there's no time interval through which things persist. So this is what makes it challenging to relate to, is that our ordinary everyday experience is based upon the belief in objects that persist. But when we look closely at our experience, that's not what we see at all. When we look closely at our experience, what we see is simultaneous arising and ceasing. We see the insubstantial, mirage-like nature of all things. So the Buddha is pointing very directly to this, and then he continues. He says, Kaccana, for the most part, this world is bound by procurement, clinging, and adherence. And as regards that procurement and clinging by the mind, that resolution and tendency towards adherence, when one does not procure, does not cling to, and does not resolve upon thoughts of my soul, that's atta, you could, more commonly that's translated as myself. When one has no doubt about, no uncertainty of, and no dependence on another for the knowledge that it is only suffering that arises and only suffering that ceases, this Kaccana is right perspective. So here the Buddha continues with one hard-hitting statement after another. So first off, he says, for the most part, this world is bound by procurement, clinging, and adherence. So that's upaya, upadana, and abhinivesa. So upaya literally means going close to, getting close to. So that's like moving towards something, like trying to obtain something, trying to get closer to or have an experience of something. Upadana literally means holding close or taking close. So that's grasping or clinging. It's where we reach out to get something and hold it close, to keep it, to hold on to it. And adherence. So abhinivesa literally means settling down on. So nivesa means a settlement. So this is used in a more general sense of like a village or a camp of people. You would call that a settlement, nivesa. And so then when you settle down in an area, when you pick a place that you're going to stay in for a while, that's nivesana. So settling in a place. So abhinivesa, the prefix abhi means in a higher way, a more intense way, a more extreme way. So abhinivesa means settling down on something in an extreme way. So in the abstract way it's being used here, that's when we settle down on a particular viewpoint or idea. We adhere to it. We stick to it. We're not willing to leave it. So it's the same, like when you settle down in a town, you don't want to leave that place. You get stuck there. It becomes your home, and therefore you don't want to leave behind your home. You don't want to abandon your home. So nivesa also has this implication of home, where you think your home is, where you think your proper place is. And so what is it that we try to procure? What is it that we try to go close to? What is it that we try to cling and grasp at? What is it that we try to hold on to and keep close to ourselves? And what is it that we settle down upon? What is it that we think is our home and that we're not willing to give up, that we're not willing to leave behind? And the Buddha says it's thoughts of myself, perspectives of our sense of self, what we think of as the essence of our being. So he, there's another word here that he uses that I should explain a little bit, which is adhitthana, translated here as resolution. So adhitthana, it has a very similar meaning to abhinivesa. So adi, the prefix adi, similarly means higher or extreme. And tana literally means standing. So aditana means an extreme form of standing on something. Tana, standing, establishing, staying. Um, so again, it has that sense of being unwilling to move away from something, being unwilling to leave something behind. So aditana, it's commonly used in a more neutral or even positive way of meaning one's ability to set one's mind on something, like to make a resolution about what you're going to do, like resolving to not eat desserts for a week, or resolving to meditate for half an hour every day. So that would be aditana, making a resolution, a determination in your mind. But it's also used in a negative sense to mean the way that we stick to things. We resolve upon things that are unwholesome, that are harmful. We get stuck upon particular viewpoints or ideas, and we're unwilling to relinquish them. We're unwilling to consider other ways that things could be. So what is it that we move towards, grasp at, try to hold on to, and adhere to? It's thoughts of self, thoughts of me and mine, who I am, what is my true essence, what is my true nature. It's getting stuck on the sense of me, the sense of self. But what the Buddha says is, he says, but it is only dukkha that arises and only dukkha that ceases. In other words, all this sense of self that we're grasping at and clinging to and sticking to, that's just dukkha. So what's coming into being moment after moment is just dukkha. And therefore what's ceasing is just dukkha ceasing. So we don't need to worry about things ending, because the only thing that's ending is dukkha. And the Buddha says, again with this statement, it is only dukkha that arises and only dukkha that ceases, which we see in a few other places in the suttas. He's also talking about the nature of samsara. So going beyond just concepts of me and mine. He's also talking about the nature of conditional existence. So moment by moment, things are constantly arising and ceasing. As he spoke about in the first paragraph, he says, when he was talking about existence and non-existence, he says, one who sees arising doesn't believe in non-existence, and one who sees cessation doesn't believe in existence. But sees arising of what? And sees ceasing of what? Well, we see the arising of all phenomena, and we see the ceasing of all phenomena. But here the Buddha, he says, well, what's arising is just dukkha. So this body and mind that's arising right now, it's just dukkha. We latch onto it as being me and mine and myself, but we're just latching on to dukkha. And this thing that's ceasing right now, this body and mind that ceases moment after moment, well, that's just dukkha ceasing. But we get so upset and disturbed when the things that we're attached to come to an end, because we don't recognize that it's just dukkha. It's just dukkha ending. It's not anything valuable. It's not anything important. It's just dukkha. So when things arise, we recognize it's just dukkha arising. So we don't get attached to it, because who would want to get attached to dukkha? And when things cease, we don't get disturbed, because who would be disturbed by the ceasing of dukkha? So watching arising and ceasing moment by moment then is a very serene and peaceful and soothing experience. Because what we're seeing moment by moment is just dukkha arising and ceasing. So the dukkha arises and we don't get attached to it, and the dukkha ceases and we're not disturbed. So the mind remains very peaceful as it watches things arising and ceasing. And this also means that the insubstantiality of phenomena is not a problem, because it's just dukkha that's insubstantial. And what's the problem there? Nothing at all. Who cares? No problem. And also what we think of as me or mine, well, that's just dukkha, arising and ceasing. So we don't need to try to hold on to it. We don't need to worry about the fact that what we think of as me and mine is arising and ceasing, because it's just dukkha. It's just dukkha arising and ceasing. So there's no problem. It's not a problem that nothing whatsoever is me or mine, because everything that seems to exist is just dukkha, seeming to exist. And it's not quite real anyway. Whatever we think of as me, it's not quite real. It can't quite be said to exist. It also can't be said to not exist. Rather, what we can say is that it appears to exist when the conditions are right. So the Buddha says, when one has no doubt about this, no uncertainty about this, and does not depend upon another for this knowledge, then that is right view. That is sammaditthi, right perspective. So it's when one clearly sees and knows for oneself through direct experience that what's arising is just dukkha and what's ceasing is just dukkha. When one clearly sees and knows for oneself through direct experience that things cannot be defined as either existing or not existing. When one clearly sees and knows for oneself that clinging to a sense of me and mine is irrational and merely causes us pain, then this is right view. This is right perspective. It's clearly seeing reality in this way, as neither existing nor not existing, as not being relevant to me and mine, as just being dukkha, arising and ceasing. So dukkha, by the way, it's not just referring to the experience of pain and misery, but it's also referring to the inherently unsatisfying nature of things. So this phrase, dukkhameva upajamanang upajjati, dukkhang nirujjamanang nirujjati, which is, it is only suffering that arises and only suffering that ceases. You could also translate that it is only unsatisfying phenomena that arise and only unsatisfying phenomena that cease. That's another way you could translate this phrase, which might be a little more useful, might be a little more helpful of a translation. Because things are still seeming to arise and cease, but they're dukkha in the sense that they're inherently unsatisfying. They have no capacity to bring happiness or joy or contentment. It's just dukkha, arising and ceasing. Nothing that's worth holding on to. And nothing that's worth being distressed about its departure. Then the Buddha caps off with a very simple summary. He says, everything exists. Kaccana, this is one extreme. Nothing exists. This is the second extreme. Kaccana, without approaching either of these two extremes, the Tathagata teaches Dhamma by the middle. And then after this, he goes into Paticca Samuppada. And if I start talking about Paticca Samuppada now, then we're going to be here until 10 o'clock, which is why Ayasoma recommended that we split this sutta into two. So at this point, I'd like to go ahead and pause and open up for questions. Do we have any questions?
First of all, hello to a few friends that showed up. So hello, Junie and Brian, who says he's brought a fever. We hope you get well as Andy, who's also sick, watching from home. So may you be all happy, peaceful, safe, and healthy. And Kyle says, good morning. Thank you for the live streams. I've taken to calling them B and N. That's great. I am so stealing that. I love it. Okay, so welcome everyone to a new episode of B and N. Actually, I don't know what they say at CNN, but good morning, MS Stargaze. I don't know exactly what the nickname stands for. And Preeti, good to see you, Preeti and Raymond. Maria. So Suzanne, hello, and Key from Australia. Great to see you all. All right. So Raymond asks, what about the rising of wholesome phenomena like love or compassion? Is that dukkha too?
Well, it's still wholesome, which means that it can lead towards awakening. It can contribute to the sankharas that lead towards awakening. But nonetheless, even wholesome sankharas are still within the domain of sankhara. They're still conditional phenomena. They're still part of samsara. They're still impermanent. They're still not self. They're still insubstantial. They're still empty. They're still arising and ceasing. And they're still ultimately unsatisfying in the sense that if we cling to them, then we suffer. And if we don't cling to them, then we don't suffer. So the answer is yes, even wholesome mind states are still dukkha. Nonetheless, we should still develop them and pursue them because they're what help us move towards an escape from dukkha, but they are still dukkha. It's only dukkha that arises and only dukkha that ceases. That which is not dukkha neither arises nor ceases. And that which does not arise and does not cease is not dukkha. Okay.
Thank you, Bante. So we're still waiting for other questions, but in the meanwhile, hello, Cam. Good to see you online. And Andy says, 1, wonderful sutta. 2, please continue till 10 p.m. on dependent origination. And Suzanne also says, BNN, I'm so mad I didn't think of that. It's brilliant. And we discovered MSK Stargaze real name, that is Melissa. So good to see you, Melissa. All right. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the live chat so then we can ask about them.
Yes.
So I thought arising and ceasing is natural phenomenon. So if we don't attach to it, it's not dukkha. That's my
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So Jennifer was asking. It seems that arising and ceasing is a natural phenomenon. So if we don't attach to it, then it's not dukkha. And yes, that's correct. So the world is what it is. As long as there's no attachment, as long as there's no desire, no aversion, and one clearly sees it exactly as it is, then there's no dukkha. That's true. Yeah. Yeah, so arising and ceasing is not the problem. The problem is our misunderstanding and our grasping.
Thank you, Bante.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, Sally asks, why are we too stuck, trapped in thoughts that bring us dukkha even though we know it's dukkha? So addictive.
Yeah, it is addictive. So there's stages in our practice. So the first stage is where we're suffering all the time and we don't know why. So that's the stage of pretty much everyone who's not Buddhist, and realistically speaking, most of the people who are Buddhist. So suffering and don't know why. The next stage of our practice is when we start to get a glimpse of the fact that we're suffering and it's caused by our own choices. It's caused by what we're doing with our body and mind. But because we have such strong habits, we're not yet able to stop ourselves. We're not yet able to change what we're doing. So we're starting to get some awareness but we don't yet have the skills and strengths and abilities to do anything about it. So this is a rather frustrating stage of practice. And it can last quite a while, unfortunately. But what usually happens is when we start to recognize the problem and we recognize that we don't currently have the strength to do anything about the problem, then we start developing and cultivating the strength. So that's often what really spurs people to become dedicated and committed to their Buddhist practice, is when they start to realize just how deep their dukkha is and how powerless they are to do anything about it. Then it's like, well, then I better develop the power to do something about it. I better work on this. So we start cultivating the power of self-restraint. We start cultivating the power of self-direction. We start cultivating wholesome activities of body, speech, and mind. We start developing samadhi. We start working on letting go of our bad habits. We start working on cultivating good habits, wholesome habits. And that process takes a long time because our old bad habits are very, very deeply rooted in the mind. They actually dominate the whole mind. The whole mind is completely infested with bad habits. So it's going to take a while to clean up all of that mess. And there's no shortcut. There's no shortcut. So we just resolutely keep going, one step after another. And along the way, we get some shifts in perspective, which make it less of a problem. We get some shifts in viewpoint, where we start to relate to our habits and tendencies and defilements in a more peaceful way. But that doesn't change the fact that we still need to build up the strength to break through them. So just being able to see your dukkha, just being able to see your defilements is not enough to destroy them. It's a huge step in the right direction. But yeah, you can see your dukkha clearly, and you can understand that you're doing it to yourself, and yet just keep doing it. And that's why we practice. That's why we build up our strength of mind. That's why we probe deeper and deeper into the subconscious. That's why we cultivate kindness. That's why we cultivate self-restraint. That's why we cultivate renunciation. Because also as our practice develops, we start to realize that we've got a very bad case of multiple personality disorder. In that one part of our mind is all like, yes, enlightenment, I will attain perfection, I will be a Buddha, yes. And another part of our mind is like, ooh, cookies, oh, hey, look at that, fine. Whoa, and ooh, what is this? No, I hate that. Oh, that's disgusting. Do I really have to get up now? And so there's two parts of our mind, at least two. Some of us are even more complicated than that. But there's at least two parts of our mind. There's the sincere Buddhist practitioner that wants to attain enlightenment. And there's the psychotic, deranged lunatic that just wants to hurt themselves as much as possible in their relentless pursuit of sensual pleasure and or aversion, depending on your tendencies. So and as we watch our mind throughout the day, we realize that we're just randomly switching between these two minds. And actually, if we're honest with ourselves, most people tend to spend a lot more time in the desire and aversion side rather than the sincere practitioner side. So it's watching. It's watching when we switch personality modes, trying to catch those times when we're starting to switch. So trying to build up the sincere Buddhist practitioner personality. And when we're in that mode, try to stay in that mode for as long as possible and to do as much as you can while you're there. And when you notice your mind is starting to slip into the delusional worldling mode, try to catch yourself and stop yourself, no matter how enticing it seems. Try to catch yourself, try to stop yourself. And then when you realize you're back in your delusional worldling mode, try to pull yourself out as quickly as possible. Try to put yourself back into the Buddhist practitioner mode. It's not easy. It's not easy. Because we're really, really good at convincing ourselves to stay in the delusional worldling personality. We're really, really good at convincing ourselves that getting what we want will make us happy, that rejecting what we hate will make us happy, that spacing out will make us happy, that daydreaming will make us happy. We're really good at convincing ourselves of this, even though it's never worked out that way, even though our track record is 100% failure. We still somehow manage to convince ourselves to keep going with those failed strategies. So when we notice we're back in that delusional worldling kind of thinking, then as quickly as possible, pull yourself out of it and put yourself back in the sincere practitioner personality. Because yeah, it's not easy. It's astounding how quickly and easily we get caught back in those old harmful habits of thinking, perceiving, and reacting to the world through patterns of desire, aversion, and delusion. That's what we're used to. So that's what we keep falling back into, even though it doesn't work, even though it just makes us really unhappy. We just keep going right back into it. So, yeah, and so actually sometimes you just have to laugh at yourself because it's just too funny. It's just like, oh, there I go again. Right back in my old silly nonsense. And it's like, all right, friend, let's pull ourselves up out of the muck. Let's get out of the cesspool, clean ourselves off, get back on the path. It's much nicer. So we pull ourselves up, we get back on the path. And then 2 minutes later, we're back playing in the feces again. And we're like, whoa, no, friend, no, come on. Get up, out of the muck, back on the path. And you're going to keep doing this for a few lifetimes. Or if you're really good, you'll just keep doing it for a few decades. That's if you're really good. Best of luck. I'm working at this too.
Let's all try and be really good then. And Key says, I think that's me. I see my dukkha and attachments, but keep doing it. Rolling eyes, crying emoji. Don't worry, Key. Welcome to the club. And as Suzanne quotes Shantideva, says, we hate suffering, but we love its causes.
Facts.
Yeah, ain't that true?
Yeah.
So Junie, on the other hand, asks, is dukkha just stupid?
Is dukkha just stupid?
Yes, that's the question.
Well, it's the product of foolishness. So I guess it's stupid to that extent. But no, I just say dukkha is just part of samsara. So we also need to accept that dukkha is just part of samsara.
Thank you, Bante. And Mehmet asks, when we're angry, we use metta and compassion as antidotes. Doesn't this contradict with letting go of whatever arises? Don't we also give rise to a new dukkha then?
Well, start by letting go of the anger and the hatred. Then we can work about letting go of other things. So yeah, the Buddha does say that ultimately we need to let go of everything, including the path. But you let go of the path once you've reached awakening. So the classic simile for this one is the simile of the raft. And actually we should go over that sutta at some point. But the simile of the raft is someone wants to cross from the near shore which is dangerous, and get to the far shore, which is safe. So they build a raft. So they gather together sticks and rope and bits of trash, and they assemble a raft. And they put the raft in the water, and they paddle to get across to the far shore. And then when they get across to the far shore, they leave behind the raft and they go on their way. So the simile here is that the near shore represents samsara, the world of dukkha and delusion. The far shore represents nirvana, nibbana, enlightenment, awakening. And the raft represents Buddhist practice, the Noble Eightfold Path, the teachings and practices of the Buddha. So what the Buddha is saying here is that, yes, when you attain awakening, then you can let go of the path, but not before then. So yes, eventually we need to let go of everything, including wholesome things, but not when you're in the middle of the water. If you let go of the raft when you're in the middle of the water, then you might drown and get swept away. That's not very useful, is it? So everyone wants to let go of the wholesome things, but you're not ready. And you won't be ready until you're half a step away from full awakening. You won't be ready to let go of wholesome things until you've let go of absolutely everything else. So most of us are nowhere near that point. So when you're in the middle of the water, you cling to that raft as tightly as you can with a white-knuckled grip. So yeah, let go of the unwholesome stuff, but cling tightly to that wholesome stuff. You're not ready to let go of the raft yet. Okay?
And Raymond says, thank you, Bhante. Is right perspective then understanding the concept of anatta, that reality and phenomena is non-self?
Yeah, that's one of the aspects of right view. So right view, it's defined in a few different ways in the suttas. One way it's defined is in terms of the Four Noble Truths. So right view is knowing dukkha, its arising, its ceasing, and the path that leads to its ceasing. That's one way it's defined. Another is that it's defined in terms of knowing karma and rebirth. And another way it's defined is in terms of knowing the three characteristics, anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Here the Buddha is emphasizing the anicca, dukkha, anatta side of that, the suññatā, the emptiness side. And the sutta it's one of the ones where the Buddha is very clearly talking about suññatā, very clearly talking about emptiness, but without actually using the word suññatā. But yeah, here he's going for the perspective of right view, which emphasizes knowing and seeing clearly the three characteristics of that all things are impermanent, unsatisfying, and impersonal. Anicca, dukkha, anatta.
And Melvin asks, how do I guard against the suffering that arises from an inability to practice? Like, say the temple is closed that day or I can't connect to the live stream. How do I prevent an attachment to Dharma?
Well, in that case, instead ask yourself, well, what can I do? The temple is closed, the live stream won't work. What can I do? Well, you can do some meditation. Hopefully you've got some Dhamma books, some Dharma that you can study and read. Do your own practice. Cultivate self-reliance. So this, for many people, this is one of the most difficult aspects of the path, is what to do when you don't have any external supports. But we need to know how to practice in those times as well, because there will be those times. And if we take those times on with diligence, then we can make a lot of progress in those times. But we can also waste a huge amount of time when there's no external supports. We can fall back in old habits very easily. So when you are faced with those conditions, then you can say, wonderful. I have an opportunity to develop the skill of practicing without external support. Isn't that great? And then try, do your best. Make a firm resolution, a firm determination, and stick to it. Keep at it. So you can't connect to the live stream? Well, practice anyway. Do some meditation, read some suttas, reflect on them, take notes, write down questions to ask later when you can connect with others again. And then when you do have the external supports, appreciate them. Because when something is accessible to us all the time, we often forget to appreciate it. So appreciate it. Today you've got the live stream working. How wonderful. Appreciate it. Be grateful for it. Delight in the opportunity. So it's always looking at your present conditions and asking, how can I use these present conditions for the benefit of my practice? If you take that attitude, then you'll always be fine. Okay?
Thank you, Bhante. And actually, Andy is echoing similar thought. So he's saying, Melvin, everything is the path, everything is practice. You can practice anywhere at any time, doing anything, friend. Just like bringing attention back to the meditation object, bring attention to activity. So thank you for sharing that, Andy. And Melissa says, this is why these regular and accessible Dharma talks are super helpful. Thank you for helping us pull our minds out of bad habits. Well, we're all Kaccana-mittas working on it together. And Sally says, really good then, few decades. What does really good means? Most of time in the Noble Eight path?
Just keep practicing. There's not really a point in trying to judge where we are on the path or how far we've come or how far is left to go. That kind of thinking doesn't do us any good. The question should just be, what can I do right now? If you just keep taking that view, what can I do right now? Then you'll keep moving towards awakening. And you'll get there when you get there. Okay.
And Catalina has joined us, so it's also good to see you. Catalina is always online. And Melissa asks, like samsara and nirvana are two sides of the same coin or just different ways of looking at same reality. Does dukkha help us realize enlightenment?
That's one way of looking at it, yeah. Because it's through a deep understanding of dukkha that one is able to transcend it and therefore to attain awakening. Yeah. So awakening is not reached by ignoring dukkha, it's by understanding dukkha. And in order to understand it, you have to see it. Okay?
All right. It seems like that is all the questions that there are for this morning. So thank you for tuning in to BNN. We will be meeting tonight at 7:30 p.m. For meditation, Dharma talk, and Dharma discussion as usual. And then tomorrow again at 8 a.m. for Sutta study. Same schedule till the end of the week. But on Saturday and Sunday, we'll also have 2 extra sessions at 1:30 p.m. because we'll have a weekend retreat focused on strong emotions. And Ella is just adding, to add another perspective, some people say that practicing Buddhism is a rebellion against our biological nature. Evolutionary psychology helps to understand why our habits are so strong. Do you have anything to say about that, Bhante?
Yeah, don't make the mistake of identifying with your biological nature. It's just biology. You don't really need to be so concerned with it. Um, so we don't really need to worry about why we have the habits that we have. We don't really need to worry about why we have the instincts and impulses that we have. Rather, we should be asking, what is wholesome? What is unwholesome? What can I do that will lead towards liberation? And how can I abandon that which keeps me stuck in dukkha? Those are the useful questions to ask. But evolutionary psychology, it's interesting. There's a lot of interesting ideas there. Some of it is similar to certain Buddhist concepts, and some of it is not so similar. But either way, it's just not within the domain of Buddhist practice. Buddhist practice is not about asking what's the evolutionary and biological reasons for what we're experiencing, but rather Buddhism is about exploring what can I do to become free of suffering? What can I do in order to change my thoughts and ideas and habits so that I can break free of these cycles of self-inflicted misery?
And last question from Sally. Is this sutta similar to the Heart Sutra?
Yes. Yep.
More coming up soon tomorrow. Tune in at 8:30 a.m. for more Heart Sutra versus Kaccānagotta Sutta. All
Sounds
right.
like the start of a wrestling match.
All right. Thanks again. So have a great, as usual, and see you soon. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.